Good afternoon, all of you. I really appreciate today that I came to National Taiwan University for the first time. I've been here for about 1 year and 8 months since I have been posted to Taiwan. So previously I was also like you as an academic, and I really appreciate that to talk to you today in this way. So I just want to explain a little bit about Somaliland. Maybe some of the Taiwanese people here, particularly the academicians here, or students, or those who are educated, do not know more about Somaliland or more about Africa. You know more about Asia, Europe, or particularly America, but you don't know more about Africa. That is what I assume, because this is not the first university I've been. I've also been in Hsinchu University, if I can pronounce that well. So I just want to give you a lecture about Somaliland today, and then at the end of the lecture, I will try to also explain a little bit about the Somaliland-Taiwan bilateralism or relationship. Why Somaliland built or established relations with Taiwan, why Taiwan also built or established relations with Somaliland. Where is Somaliland, how Somaliland is being formed, established, and most of the lecture will be about Somaliland. But at the end of the lecture, we'll try to explain a little bit about the relationship of the two countries. So we talk about Somaliland and Somaliland history a little bit. We also talk about Somaliland political system and Somaliland-Taiwan bilateralism. About Somaliland, I'll give you a basic information about Somaliland, what Somaliland is about. I also will talk about a little bit about the demographics of Somaliland, topography, demographics of Somaliland as well. Of course, culture is one of the main important things. When you're talking about a country, you have to talk about the culture of that country, because every country and every society in the world have their own culture, traditions, norms, and customs, which is quite different from other countries or other nations' traditions and norms. So the basic information, Somaliland's size when it comes to territorial integrity. Somaliland is 177,000 kilometers square, 5 times the size of Taiwan. So it's quite big when compared to Taiwan, quite big by land. But when it comes to population, Somaliland's population is about 5.7 million people, which is quite less, or 4 times less the population of Taiwan. The government of Somaliland is unilateral presidential, so same as the government of the United States, where the president has more powers than the parliament, although there are checks and balances. Somaliland has its own check and balances, a parliament, a judiciary organ, as well as the executive organ of the government, which is led by the president. So the president becomes the head of the state of the country. He is the head of the government, as well as the commander-in-chief of the country. So Somaliland is a presidential system. So most of the powers lies on the president organ, which is the executive organ. And then the capital of Somaliland, Hargeisa, which people live in Hargeisa, about 1.7 million people, around 1.5 to 1.7 million people. We have elections, unlike other African countries, we have some elections. Our president is elected, our parliament and our local government. We have elections every year. Since 2001, we have elections. Somaliland demographics. The population growth of Somaliland is 3.1. So compare that to Taiwan is 1.2. So when it comes to people who are giving birth in Somaliland, is triple the size of the people who have been giving birth in Taiwan. So that's a difference. More population, more people coming to Somaliland's population. The mortality is quite high in Somaliland because of its health system. It's not as good as Somaliland's health system. So every 1,000 people, there are 13 people who pass away in Somaliland. That's the high mortality. In Taiwan, it's about 3. So that's a difference. Fertility rate, women who give birth, is normally in the world, the standard fertility rate in the world, the global fertility rate, is 2.5. In Taiwan is about 1.2, and in Somaliland about 1.5. So that is also the difference between Taiwan and Somaliland in terms of fertility rate. Women who are going to give birth or who are willing to give birth. Literacy, people who can able to read or write. In Somaliland is only about 48%. In Taiwan is about 96%. But you compare to other African countries, some of the countries are about 35%, 20%, some of the countries, as low as 20%. Language in Somaliland is Somali. People speak English and Arabic as well. Religion, most of the population in Somaliland, some say 99% of the people who live in Somaliland are Muslims. Others say 100% of the people that live in Somaliland are Muslims. Quite moderate Muslims, not Muslims like Afghanistan or Muslims in Somalia, quite moderate Muslims. The age structure in Somaliland, for example, is 70% of the people who live in Somaliland is under the age of 30. Somaliland is a young, very young population. Africa is a young population, but Somaliland is one of the youngest population when it comes to people like your age are 70% of the population. In Taiwan, 70% of the population here is above the age of 50. So that's the difference. I just want to compare in order to make you understand what Somalilands are like to Taiwan, which you know more. The student population in Somaliland is about 400,000. In Taiwan, it's about 4 million. University graduates, 5 to 7,000. So where is Somaliland then? This is Somaliland, the red dot. It's a very small in the map of Africa because Africa is the second biggest country in the world. The second biggest continent in the world, I mean. Africa is about 30 million kilometers square. Somaliland is only about 177,000 kilometers square. But Somaliland locates a very, very strategic place. You see Somaliland is port in there. So Djibouti, this is the Red Sea here. That's Ethiopia, the second most populous country in Africa. And Somalia, which you might sometimes mistaken when you talk about Somaliland. Some people, Somalia and Somaliland, they cannot differentiate, but they are two different countries. This is the Somaliland map, official Somaliland map. Somaliland consists of around 6 regions. Somaliland currency, we have our own currency and our own passports. The diplomat passport, the red one, the black one is the ordinary passport, and the service passport which government officials sometimes use, which is the green one. Culture, Somaliland. This is what Somaliland used to use, centuries ago for eating, for cooking, for defense, for example, and for housing at the same time. Beautiful ladies in Somaliland. This is the dress. I was asking my wife today, which is in front of me, to also wear that, but unfortunately she didn't wear that. So this is the normal Somaliland culture of dressing, men and women. But that was quite primitive. When you see just the shoes, it's quite primitive. Food of Somaliland. Pancake is very popular in Somaliland. And halwa, which is sweets and a dessert. At the same time, tea is also, and liver for breakfast. Some people like eating liver at the breakfast time. So the history of Somaliland, we were a British protectorate. So Africa has been colonized by the Europeans. 7 European countries came to Africa in 1881 up until 1960s. Those European countries colonized the majority of African countries, and they demarcated the internationally recognized borders, including Somaliland's border. Only 2 countries are unrecognized, are not colonized in Africa. That's Ethiopia and Liberia. All others have been colonized. So we talk about also Somaliland's post-independence, when Somaliland got its independence from Britain, and when Somaliland reclaimed or withdrawn its sovereignty back from Somalia. This is the Scramble of Africa, how Africa has been divided by the Europeans. So British, the French, Germans, the Portuguese, Italians, the Belgium, and the Spanish came to Africa and they colonized every part of Africa except these two countries, Liberia and Ethiopia. They tried to invade Ethiopia, the Italians tried, but they failed after 6 years of war. So Ethiopia has never been colonized fully. But most of the other African countries has been colonized for years and years, decades and decades. So that's Somaliland in Africa. It's a British Somaliland. So how Africans divided the Somali people within that region, this is the situation now. You see Somalia, Somaliland. You see the map here where Somalia inhabits, Ethiopia region, the Kenya region called Northern Frontier region. Djibouti is a Somali-speaking country. Somaliland and Somalia, those were the Somalis who have been colonized by different European countries, and their territory has been divided because of this colonialism. Somaliland was the British, Somalia was the Italian, Djibouti was the French, Ethiopia, and then Kenya, which has also been colonized by the British. The international treaties, there was international treaties signed by three countries, Italians, the French, and the British, of dividing the Somali territories into 5 Somali territories. So this is also the Somaliland map made by the British in 1894. So that is the very same territorial boundaries Somaliland claims as an independent country from 1991. This is the 1960 when Somaliland signed its independence from the British in London. So the gentleman who is sitting down became the first prime minister of Somaliland in the 1960. We got our independence from Britain 26 June 1960. That was the celebration day, the anniversary, the launching of independence in Somaliland in the 1960. The color of that picture is not good because it was a very long time ago. This is when a country is recognized, there's always a message from governments. So this is the Queen Elizabeth II message, a letter to Somaliland's independence. So it was a congratulatory letter for Somaliland's independence in the 1960s. So Somaliland was once an independent country. Again, it is Christian Herter, the Secretary of State of the United States, who also congratulating Somaliland for its independence in 1960. That's the message, which is for a telegram message. And then the People's Republic of China, at the time in the 1960s, also congratulated Somaliland's independence at the time. So there were 35 countries who recognized Somaliland before Somaliland united with Somalia in the 1960s. 5 days after it got its independence from Britain. These are the countries I've been talking about that recognize Somaliland. And this is what has happened when Somaliland united with Somalia. With Somaliland united with Somalia, there was a huge genocide that has been conducted to the people of Somaliland after 30 years of union. So this is how the union has failed. Around 200,000 people have been killed. There was air bombardments and artillery shelling to the Somaliland people. All the cities of Somaliland has been destroyed by the government of Somalia in the 1980s, late 1980s. That was Hargeisa, being destroyed by the government of Somalia before Somaliland withdrew its independence from Somalia. 90% of this city has been destroyed. This is one of the disastrous things. Somaliland's population at the time was about 2.5 to 2.6 million people in the 1980s. And you see 3 million landmines are there, landmines. These landmines was the lineman is that the government of Siad Barre, the dictatorship of Somalia at the time, put into the grounds of Somaliland's regions, that was 3 million, imagine. Hargeisa in 1991, you can see Hargeisa in 1991 and Hargeisa in 2017, completely two different Hargeisas. Hargeisa has been rebuilt again by its people, but when this has been rebuilt was from 1991. And then Somaliland declared its independence from Somalia in the 1991 from Somalia. That was the conference. People of Somaliland came together and they declared independence from Somalia in 1991. Since then, Somaliland became an independent country from Somalia. It has got its own everything, own flag, own government, own passports, own money, own, everything. Own military personnel, police, political parties. So Somaliland is completely independent country, just like Taiwan is an independent country from PRC. But no country recognized Somaliland in that sense. So the political system of Somaliland, this is the president of Somaliland. Our system is a presidential system, I have already told that. The capital is Hargeisa. We have a bicameral system. Bicameral means when you have two parliament, two houses, when you combine that two houses, it becomes the parliament. So we have eldest parliament, just like the United States. They have the Senate and the House of Representatives. So when you combine them, they become the House of Congress. Or the UK, they have House of Lords and House of Commons. So that's the parliament of the UK as well. So we have the parliament with two houses, just like the UK and the United States. We have also 3 political parties. Since 2001, we have had 8 different elections, from municipal elections, presidential elections, and parliamentarian elections. And we have been stable for the last 30 years. Economic-wise, we have a solid, political-wise, we have a solid and sustainable democratic system. So our democratic system is not like the democratic system in Africa, where when elections take place in Africa, for example, Kenya and some other countries, when elections take place, there are violences that take place at the same time. In Somaliland, there's no violences. The opposition party accept the results, the preliminary results of whatever the results come up. For example, if I give you an example, in the 2003 elections, a prominent candidate was running the election from the main opposition party, and he lost the election only 80 votes, 80 votes against his contestant. And 2 days after, he accepted the results, 80 votes. There is no single country in the history of humankind, in the history of mankind, where elections take place and 80 votes result has been accepted. Not in the United States, not in the UK, no any other country in the world, but only Somaliland, that a main opposition party with a prominent leader accepted the results with a number of only 80 votes lose. That was the 30 years I've been talking about. Somaliland, when you hear Somalia or something about Somali, just the first thing that comes into your mind is that piracy, right? Because lots of Taiwanese, when I first came here, oh, Somaliland, do you have some pirates? I said, no, we don't have pirates, that's Somalia. So that's the first thing that came to the mind of the people when they talk about Somalia or hear Somalia. But Somaliland, there is no single incident of piracy in the territorial waters of Somaliland. No terrorist activities in Somaliland. Somaliland is quite peaceful, just like Taiwan. We have these kind of free and fair elections. We surviving economy with little help from outside, and the community resilience. We have this kind of community resilience. Taiwan also have a very good community resilience. So I just want to also talk about the strength of Somaliland. This is the strength of Somaliland, the people of Somaliland, the geographical location of Somaliland, where Somaliland locates, is a very, very strategic place. You know, in the Sea of Somaliland locates in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, Bab el-Mandeb, the Mediterranean, and very close to the Indian Ocean. So it's so strategic. Around 60%, 66.6% of the world energy passes where Somaliland locates. 66.6, because most of the oil coming from the Middle East countries. And this 66% of oil passes peacefully through Somaliland's territorial waters. So, and when you imagine energy, when we're talking about energy, those of you who knows economics, energy is the machine of the economy. Without energy, I won't be here and talking to you because I can't use this microphone if there's no energy. And we cannot see anything here. You don't have these laptops, these MacBooks, nothing. So energy is the machine of the economy that moves the economy, and 66.6% of the fossil oil comes from the Middle East countries, passes Somaliland peacefully to Taiwan, to Europe, to Asia, to America, everywhere. So that's how Somaliland's place is so strategic. And on the other hand, 30% of the commodities and goods also passes Somaliland. So we have that long coast, around 850 kilometers long. We have untapped natural resources, mining, for example, minerals, oil, cement. We have plenty of natural resources, but unfortunately we can't, it's untapped resources. No one has exploited these resources because of know-how. This is one of the things that we came here to learn from Taiwan, because Taiwan is quite advanced in these areas, and CPC, the oil company of Taiwanese oil company, is already investing in Somaliland's oil for the first time. So something that Somaliland also can benefit. Of course, on the other hand, Taiwan can also benefit from Somaliland's natural resources and raw material. We have a free market economy where 95% of the economy of Somaliland lies on the private sector, not the public sector. So you can see in Taiwan, for example, around 40% or 39% of the economy lies on the government side, although much of the economy lies on the private sector. But in Somaliland, it's a completely capitalist country where there's an unregulated system of the economy, no regulation system of the economy in that sense. So we have free market economy, one of the freest market economy with unregulated policies. Stable and democratic, and young population. This is the strategic place I've been talking about. That's the resources I've been talking about. We have when you are going to claim as a country, as an independent country, anyone heard about the Montevideo Convention? Any one of you heard about Montevideo Convention? Montevideo Convention is how countries can become countries. So what are the basics of becoming a country? So you should have 4 elements if you just want to become a country. Divine territory. You have to have a divine territory. Taiwan has a divine territory. They have its own borders. Somaliland has its own territorial integrity. You should have a permanent population. We have 5.7 million people. You have 23 million people. You have your own government. We have our own government functioning. And we have the capacity, and you have the capacity to enter into relations with other countries. So you can have some relations with Japan, you have some relation with Vietnam or the Philippines. So as we have some relations with Ethiopia, our neighbors, Djibouti, and other countries. Taiwan, for example, United Arab Emirates, some other countries. That's the capacity that you can enter into relations with other countries. So that's the statehood criteria. So what Somaliland contributes to the region? For example, Taiwan is a force for good. It contributes so much to the world. Economy, a vibrant economy, very aggressive economy. Semiconductor. When you hear Taiwan, you have to hear the semiconductor also. So Somaliland also contributes not that much economy, but peace and stability and democracy and what I've been talking about, just like where Somaliland locates, it contributes that the energy, 66% of the energy of the world passes through these peacefully. So we have a very good relations with our neighbors. There's no crimes. We have very good relations with Djibouti, Ethiopia, and so many other countries. And we contribute a lot to the, because in the Horn of Africa, the place that we're located, there are so many problems. There are unstable countries in that area. So Somaliland is the only stable country in the region. We have neighbors with Yemen, which is not, the stability is not as good as could be imagined. Ethiopia, there are skirmishes in Ethiopia. You go to South Sudan, you go to Eritrea, you go to Somalia. There are many countries which are completely inferno in the Horn of Africa. So Somaliland is the most stable country in that area. So let's talk about the diplomacy of Somaliland, how Somaliland engages to international communities, how Somaliland, try to make some relations with other countries in the world for the last 30 years. So some examples are here. That was our finance minister now. Previously was the foreign minister. That's the foreign minister of Kenya, and that is the majority leader of Kenyan parliament. So we can easily meet with other head of states. Our head of state can also meet the head of states of other countries. Let me show you some more. Our president, our current incumbent president, that's the president of Djibouti and the prime minister of Ethiopia. So we have formal relations in this kind. We get invitations from other head of states, and we can easily meet with them and talk to them on the interests of our two countries. So we have these kind of a bilateral relations with neighbors and other countries as well, because of where we're located, because of our peace and stability. Let me show you some more from other countries. That is a Prime Minister of Ethiopia and President of Somaliland meeting with the Foreign Minister of Eritrea with the same equal treatment, with the same protocols when it comes to diplomacy. So people in that area respect us as a country. And that's the UK Defense Minister visited Somaliland in 2019, early 2019. And that's the Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister, met with our former President and Foreign Minister in 2012. In the Middle East, that's the head of the United Arab Emirates, met with our President recently, that was 2019. And we have seen here the Saudi ambassador visiting Somaliland from Kenya and meeting with our President. The EU ambassadors visiting Somaliland, the Americans, the United Nations. So we have this kind of formal relationship with the international community. We are not an isolated country. International communities engaged to Somaliland, we engage to the international community. So we have these kind of a bilateral meetings with international organizations as well as other countries in the world. And finally, I think our president and other two regional head of states, presidents. For example, the president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, and president of Djibouti, Ismail Omar Gele. And on the other side, you can see our president holding hand with the other president of Kenya in Djibouti. Vision and strategy. We have a vision of 2030, and we base our vision to become a very stable country, to become a recognized country, to have so many friends, to receive more friends in the world, and to strengthen our democracy and rule of law. We have a national plan. We have a regional plans at the same time. Every country has its plans, regional plans. We have Somaliland a special arrangement from the international community, where the international community always treats us with a special arrangement other than that of Somalia. So Somaliland has its development fund, where it receives more aid from other countries. And we have these kind of reforms, public finance reform. We use in our system on what we call a financial information system, FMIS, and public information management system. That's the two systems we use in our finances. We have also civil service reform. We have justice reform. We have private sector reform. And our macroeconomy The area that we grow in our macroeconomy is the construction area. So you can assume that Somaliland is growing on its construction part. Our currency, although our currency is not a backed currency to the US dollars, but it's absolutely a stable currency. Inflation is only 2%. In Taiwan, I think it's about 1.6%. Trade, livestock is our main export. So we have many livestock in Somaliland. That's our main livestock. That's the main thing that we export to the international markets, particularly Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, United Arab Emirates. And we are also now working, because we have lots of sheep and goats. We are planning, if we met the standards of Taiwan, then we might have some kind of developments on trying to also export our meat and milk to Taiwan's markets as well. Increase of our last year, same period, is 14% on our livestock exports. Imports, that is lots of, because we don't have much agriculture in Somaliland. So most of the products, we import products from other countries like China, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Europe, other European countries. We do import. And then we re-export that into other countries in Africa, because there is lots of other countries in Africa that are landlocked countries. They don't have a sea, so we have the country that have the sea, so we can supply around 400 million people in African countries. There is an increase on our trade around 23%. That was last year, I think. Our financial stability, this is talking about our budget, which is quite small. Our fiscal deficit, there's none. We don't have any fiscal deficits. We don't have a debt. It's the only country in the world that zero debt. Zero debt. Somaliland has a zero debt. We don't borrow from the international banks, financial institutions. So we have completely zero debt, zero debt fiscal, and at the same time we don't have any debt from other World Banks or Bretton Woods or other financial institutions. Foreign debt is zero as well. Trade is deficit is not as much as that, because although we have some trading deficits in some of our neighbors, but what we import is so much and re-export to the other countries. So that means we have also, we don't have any trade deficit in that sense. Foreign exchange control, our currency can be converted to other, for example, dollars, Ethiopian birr, Djiboutian foreign, Somalians shillings, and other currencies. So we don't have these kind of restrictions on our currency. Tax regime, this is one of the most important things. That when investors are going to invest a country, the first question that they will ask you is about the corporate tax. So Somaliland's corporate tax is about 10%. 10% corporate tax. It's very, very small. Income tax is about 6%. Sales tax is about 5%. Tax holiday for investors is about 3 to 5 years or 5 years. If you just want to invest Somaliland, you don't have to pay tax around 5 to 3 years. So investment incentives is one of the things that we do when people or companies are trying to invest Somaliland. We attract by providing them a land. So we give them a land, a free land, in order to build that land or invest that land. And for the machinery and materials will be tax exempt unless they're going to make a profit. Financial sectors, we have a central bank that controls our currency, our hard currency, our local currency. We have other private banks, but we don't have a conventional banks yet. All banks are based on Islamic financing. We have what we call mobile banking. It doesn't need any internet. Everyone in Somaliland is a completely cashless society. When you can't see someone who's holding Somaliland shillings or US dollars most of the time in Somaliland, because they use their mobile phones to send and receive money, and they don't need internet for that. So I think there are several countries that also use this kind of mobile banking system, including Kenya. Remittance is one of the things that, because there are lots of diaspora communities in Somaliland, in Europe and North America, so those also invest the country in terms of remittance by providing some assistance to the relatives or immediate families, or at the same time they sometimes invest the country. So there are gaps when it comes to banking and mortgaging insurance in Somaliland. International links of Somaliland, Berbera port is one of the major ports. We built this port by getting investment from the United Arab Emirates. So it's one of the biggest ports in Africa. It can host probably by next year around 2 million containers, or probably by next year, 2 million containers. We have also a gateway to Ethiopia, to South Sudan, and that combined, these two countries are around 130 million people. Berbera, we have a very big airport. We have the longest runway airport in Somaliland. That's in Berbera. We invest that Berbera airport. Berbera airport previously was in the Soviet Union era, or the Cold War era, it was a military base. And then the Americans came in the 1980s and they established a military base, military facility in Berbera, and then the United Arab Emirates. So it's a very strategic area in which foreign countries, when there are some insecurity in the world, Berbera is very important for big countries to come and build some military facilities there. We have also another airport in Hargeisa. We have some other airports, local airports. There are flights, Ethiopian Airlines, East African Press, Chupa, Dalo, Fly Dubai, which is Emirates, a branch of Emirates, and Al Arabiya, United Arab Emirates flights. We have a mobile coverage everywhere in Somaliland. We have the internet, which is quite reliable. We have a fiber optic internet and networking system. So potential investment areas in Somaliland is about the renewable energy. We have wind, we have biomass, we have biogas, we have solar system, because we receive sun for the 12 months of the year. We receive sun or wind and geothermals. Hydrocarbons are there, oil and gas. Minerals are there. Finance banking is a gap in Somaliland. So anyone who's going to invest finances in Somaliland, there is a space, because the market's also open market. Agriculture, around 10% of our land is arable land. You can do your farming in that areas. We have the agriculture, we have the fishing, we have the dairy, the milk, we have the poultry in that area. So those are the areas people who have businesses can invest. So there is chances and opportunities for investors to come and invest in these areas. Health and hospitality is also an areas in which you can invest for business people or businesses in Taiwan, businesses in other countries. Construction and housing, or real estates or industrial estates are areas in which also can attract investment in Somaliland. Infrastructure like ports, airports, another area to be invested in Somaliland. Investor confidence, current investors presented are those who have made the courage to come to Somaliland, who invested at these companies. Boring Geronima Group of Industries, the foreign companies, Coca-Cola is another company, Western Union, BCMI, those are banks, and Newborn Gold, so those DNO, DB World, Ganel Energy, and CBC. Sorry that I did not put CBC in there, but CBC also is one of the countries that make these kind of courage to invest in Somaliland. That's Berbera Port. That's the port that we have. It's a very big port. Somaliland, UAE, Ethiopia joint venture. That is what the agreements was when Somaliland port has been invested in 2016. And Somaliland's one of the potential chances, the good chances that Somaliland has is that Somaliland also not locates in a very strategic area, but it has a neighbor completely a landlocked label. 16 African countries that landlocked, that don't have a sea in that area. Somaliland is the place that can supply all these lands. And the population of these countries are around 400 million people. So when you see Somaliland there, the countries in colors are completely countries that do not have sea. So, and Somaliland locates the most strategic area in Africa. You know, when you are in Taiwan, the closest country when it comes to Africa, the closest country to Taiwan is Somaliland. When you are in any part of Asia, yes, the closest country is that. So let me give you the Somaliland-Taiwan relationship. I think, is it okay that we can proceed because it will take only 5 minutes to finish this, or we just have can we continue? Yeah, because we are in the last part of the session. Somaliland-Taiwan bilateralism. So this is the main thing. Maybe some of you want to ask me questions from, or some of you want to understand what's the nature of the relationship between Somaliland and Taiwan. So I just want to give you an overview, a very small introduction about what Somaliland's and Taiwan's relation is about. The potential cooperation of the two countries, the trade and investment area, those are the areas I just want to talk about the relationship. The relationship was built in, I came here in 2020 as a fact-finding mission to try to understand Taiwan. And there was a delegation, Taiwanese delegation came to Somaliland in 2019. So my fact-finding report was that Taiwan is a reliable country in which Somaliland can establish relations with. So it's important that Somaliland can establish some sort of relations with Taiwan. That's the report I get back to my government. And there was also a report back from the people who went there, the Taiwanese officials, that comes up with the same answer, that Somaliland is also a reliable country and it's good to have relations with. And we have this kind of a bilateral accord in 2020, June. And the areas of which we agreed to work with was that we first established offices, representative offices in each of those countries, Hargeisa and Taipei. And then we have some kind of a economic relationship, security relationship, political relationship in multi-dimensional areas. The two countries can do more together. They can exchange exposure visits. And the Somaliland, for example, the education and the know-how and the technology is quite primitive in Somaliland when it comes to, compared to Taiwan. So Taiwan, that will be an area that Taiwan can also help Somaliland to build its infrastructure of ICT, for example. And when it comes to other areas like extractive development and extractive industry, it's an area in which Somaliland also can also provide and can also offer to Taiwan in that sense. Fishing, education, medical development, information technology, trade, and all this. So, for example, Somaliland is a gate, and Taiwan is a manufacturing industry. So, if Taiwan wants to go to Africa, Somaliland could be the gate. It's easy for Taiwan to have this kind of relationship with Somaliland. It will be much easier for it that it can supply its products, the businesses, the Taiwanese business communities, to provide some commodities and goods to African countries through Somaliland. So Somaliland could be the gate to African countries when it comes to Taiwan. We know that Taiwan has some relations with African countries, for example, Eswatini, but Eswatini is a landlocked country. They don't have a sea, and they are other part of the continent. So, but Somaliland is the closest country, and it has the most strategic. It locates the most strategic area in Africa, so it will be easier for Taiwan to also transport its products and commodities to African countries in the future. So that's the potential of Somaliland. That is and other areas they can work. They can also build bridges. For example, we can give Taiwan a gate in which the Taiwanese diplomats can go to other African countries. For example, now the representative Taiwanese representative to Somaliland can easily go to Djibouti. He went to Djibouti last month. He can go to Kenya for now, because coming from Somaliland to Kenya. He went also Uganda. So it will be very much easier for the Taiwanese officials to travel from Somaliland to other African countries and engage the African countries in terms of business, diplomacy, trade, socially, many areas. So that's another area. And these are the potential areas in which the two countries are now can the two countries cooperate, in which Taiwan can also benefit and Somaliland can benefit. Extractive industry, mining, oil, the industrial processes for extracting minerals, including drillings and all this. Another area is agriculture development, and other areas the commercial fishing development and harvesting processing, because we have a very long sea, which is completely untapped. Secondary industries include light industries. Taiwanese businesses can establish light industry in Berbera, and then they will export their products to other African countries. Also tertiary, which is the telecommunication, the hospitality. It's another sector that there is a gap in Africa in which Taiwan can also show its strength to other African countries. So those are money potentials in which Taiwan can benefit from Somaliland in that sense. And Somaliland, of course, can benefit Taiwan for education, for know-how of ICT and technology and these areas. So these are the areas in which now we are cooperating with the Taiwanese government as well as the Taiwanese businesses. Trade is another area. Import trade, export trade, intraport trade. Intraport means Somaliland the Taiwanese company can can export to commodities and goodies to Somaliland, and then they can re-export that into other African countries as a gate. And investment area is open, stock markets are open, commercial loans are open, concessions, joint ventures, and franchises are also another industries in which Taiwan and Somaliland can work together. Thank you very much for listening. I took, I think, more time. And this is, I think, the time that you can ask me any questions, or you can go break. Thank you very much once again. I really appreciate that. Thank you.